Hi, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dunker Spot. We are part of the Basketball News Podcast Network. I am your host, Nekias Duncan, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Steve Jones Jr. How are you, sir?
Doing well. I'm doing well. Glad to be here. Glad to be back, I guess you could say. Someone asked if we got canceled. No. We might tonight, but we'll see what happens. Thank you all for embracing your bounce. And let's get after it. I'm excited and ready to go with the man, the one and only, the great Nekias Duncan, who called out Damian Lillard for asking for a NFL Sunday ticket login on Twitter.
Glad to be back. It has been a long time. Life has been lifing, so I'm glad to be talking about basketball with a somewhat clear conscience at this point. In regards to the Damian Lillard tweet, right? You're Damian Lillard. Like, you could probably contact DirecTV directly and get Sunday ticket for life if you wanted to. Unless that was like in breach of the Hulu contract, in which case that would be kind of funny. Because they have live sports, you see. And so for him to be asking for a Sunday ticket login, it's just like, also you're Dame. Like, hop on a jet, go to whatever game you want to go to. Like, I don't know. Like, why are you asking for free logins?
He's a human being, just like all of us, trying to figure it out.
That's very true. But like, also, like, you could just get your own free login. You're Damian Lillard.
Also, shout out to you taking out a whole streaming service during that. Hope they don't support us.
I don't think it's slander or anything. I mean, like, he has the partnership with Hulu, so I mean, it's just, I don't know. I didn't expect to see that tweet for a multitude of reasons, but the fun part about stuff like that is, like, there were absolutely like hundreds of people like, "Hey, Dame, just DM me. I'll give you my login." And it's just like, bro, come on.
Well, that's the other part. Why wouldn't you? There's mad people who are ready to just hand over their password to Dame for the Sunday ticket so he can enjoy Giants Falcons on a Sunday.
Oh, goodness. Prayers up for everyone that had to watch that game, by the way. Like, I had to watch the Falcons in week 1 just because they're playing Philly, and I'm going to have to watch the Giants when they play Philly. Other than that, y'all can have it. Y'all can have Daniel Jones. Y'all can have Matt Ryan and whatever Arthur Smith is trying to do with that offense. This is a basketball podcast. I am not doing that today. Anyway.
Yeah, shout out to anyone who has watched the Eagles.
Thanks. 1-1. We'll take it. We'll see what this Monday Night Football game is going to look like. Anyway, shifting back to basketball, we did have some WNBA playoff games. We had some single-elimination games that kicked off on Thursday. We got Chicago Sky defeating the Dallas Wings, beating them by 17. The Sky were in control for most of that one until a third quarter surge by the Wings, and then it all kind of fell apart. The Mercury beat the Liberty in the thriller 83-82. And then on Sunday, we get Mercury Storm. It was an 85-80 game. I was intrigued by it. No Breanna Stewart for the Storm, so I wanted to see where the offense would come from. That responsibility was supposed to fall to Jewel Lloyd. And as great as she's been all year, very worthy of an all-WNBA team this season, she put up her worst game to date.
She cannot buy a basket. She cannot buy a basket, and she was trying, and they were trying to feed her in all sorts of different ways: pick and roll, off screen, off ball, transition, spot up. You could hear in the timeouts, coach was saying, "Hey, you be ready to knock it down." Elevator screens, all the things they could do, and she could not buy one. It was crazy, and she was trying with all her heart out. That was a great game. Mercury Storm should never be single elimination ever again, at least as long as Diana Taurasi and Suber are playing. That's just my opinion.
I would have liked to have seen a series in that. Like, it was just the cat and mouse game of the Storm trying to defend Brittany Griner was fun. Like, it was kind of a similar thing that we saw in the Liberty Mercury game on Thursday. Whenever Brittany Griner got a post touch, the double was coming. You try to run a pick and roll featuring Brittany Griner, they're pre-rotating, sending help early. They are making sure that she does not get comfortable in the paint because they know if she gets a clean catch, it's a bucket of free throws. So watching the Storm just kind of crowd Brittany Griner wherever they could, particularly in pick and roll. There was a possession that I noted on Twitter early in the second quarter where they set up, I think it was Skylar Diggins-Smith at that point, running point. They try to set up an empty corner pick and roll with Brittany Griner, and they pre-rotate to help. Brianna Turner is above the break, so they basically force the ball into her hands, and she is not a shooting threat at all. So they're basically daring her to either knock down a perimeter shot or to make a play. And it was a gamble that mostly worked, at least until the fourth quarter came and Brittany Griner just couldn't be stopped. I mean, there's only so much you can do there. And once you combine that with the fact that the Storm just could not get anything from Jewel Lloyd, and if Jewel Lloyd didn't have it going, they were trying to piece it together with a bunch of different players. Katie Lou Samuelson chipped in with 18. You got Mercedes Russells, who tried to keep them in it in that first half, just kind of doing a little bit of everything on offense. And even Sue Bird chipped in with 16. But they just couldn't find the offense. I think it was the bigger issue. And by the time they started getting some kind of rhythm, kind of getting out on the break and getting some easy ones that way, the Mercury kind of settled down. They got interior buckets. And that was kind of your game.
Well, it's a really interesting thing back and forth wise. You could see Seattle was trying to generate offense without Stewart in the game, but it always felt like they would execute, and there were half stretches where it felt like, wait, this is the part where she's supposed to do something, or you know what I mean? Like, this is A to B. Wait, B's not here. We got to get to C somehow. And then on the other end, Phoenix would find their way, find their rhythm, really execute, and then they would forget what got them to the dance for periods of times, which has been my frustration with the Mercury all season, in which they have the talent. And obviously you can see it in this platform, being able to survive 2 single elimination games. But they often forget who they are, what has brought them to the dance, and get themselves in trouble that way. So it becomes can Skylar Diggins-Smith make a drive and make something happen? I mean, because Brittany Griner in a drag with Diana Taurasi in transition is unstoppable. If the corner is empty, there's nothing you can do. You have to step up if you're defending, and that's going to open up the role. But too often they kind of bog down, or they try and overdo it or anything like that. It's just, that's always been my yin yang with the Mercury. They have the talent, but will they put it together consistently? And they gutted it out. Credit to them. But it'll be interesting to see how they go going forward.
And to that point, that game went to overtime in large part because they kind of lost their way towards the end of the fourth, to where I think you got a Diana Taurasi pull-up 3 with about a minute and a half to go in the fourth, and then it just turned into a lot of Skylar Diggins-Smith isolations, and it's like, maybe run something first, and then if all else fails, go to Skylar, or feed Brittany Griner, who's basically double guaranteed to get the defense in rotation because she's going to get doubled on the block. Or if you're running a pick and roll with her, if it's not, with, like you said, Diana Taurasi and her with an empty corner, they're going to send some help early because they don't want her to have a clear path rolling to the basket. So that's going to shift the defense, and you can get a catch and shoot opportunity somewhere else. So the late game's execution was weird in that regard. That's how the game ended up in overtime, that and missed free throws. But they were able to churn it out in that overtime, and that's going to set up the matchup later on this week. We'll touch on that shortly. The other game on Sunday afternoon was the Sky and the Lynx. Ended up being a 13-point game. And similar to what we saw on Thursday, if the Sky, as inconsistent and as unhealthy as they've been this year, as they found their rhythm always coincides with them being able to push the pace. They're able to turn you over, get out in transition, get some easy ones. And that's exactly what happened. I think 24 fast break points in this game, which is more than a quarter of their offense. That's your game. The Lynx kind of want to slow it down. They have a really good defense. They're able to churn out half court buckets led by Sylvia Fowles. But if you're able to thwart that at all, or if you're able to force turnovers like the Sky were able to today, Chicago on the break, there really isn't an answer. They have shooters all over the place. They have Candace Parker who can lead your break, finish your break, can find open shooters in that regard as well. They have athletes all over the place. Kalia Copper, was tremendous. Is always a threat to get to the rim. So they have a lot of different weapons they can hit you with, and they were able to do that because they were able to get out in transition today.
How much do you think the single elimination format helps teams like the Mercury, teams like the Sky, who may not have put together the best regular seasons, but have the talent to perform in the postseason? How much do you think it helps them?
I think it helps them a little bit in regards. I think in an odd way, it takes the pressure off because they're not trying to string together a bunch of games in a row to find a rhythm. It's like, hey, we just got to get this done today. And once you add that with the talent that they have, and not just the talent, but the experience that they have, particularly the Mercury, once you get into a late game situation or something, like you have veterans that can just kind of chip in and find their way. Where like a team like the Liberty, they don't have that kind of veteran experience outside like Natasha Howard. So I think it helps them in that regard.
Is the world still sleeping on Courtney Vandersloot?
They shouldn't be at this point. Like, what is there to sleep on right now? She's been doing this for a while now.
Did you want to apologize to Caleb McBride?
You know what? She was pretty good today. Was not enough to lead the Lynx to a victory. Wasn't her fault, but she was good. I will give her credit. It would have been nice to have had that during the postseason with the Aces last year.
Some real salt right there. Some sodium you just laced on the dunker spot.
I'm just saying, she hit shots, and that would have been a nice feature to add to an offense that needs some perimeter help, I would say. But the past is the past. That's fine. I don't want to hang too far on that one. How dangerous are the Sky for you heading into the postseason now?
The Sky are very tough with what they have as a complete mix. They're a complete team, and they're not someone you want to face in the postseason. That's how I felt during the whole regular season. It felt like they were waiting to get things together, obviously get their whole crew together. But this isn't a team you want to deal with in these type of scenarios. And so going forward, they can present problems, and they got wiggle room. They got room for error. They've kind of made it past where they need to. So it'll be interesting to see how they take off going forward. It's going to be tough.
I'm kind of with you. Like the Sky have been that team again, that the season opener for them when they were still very clearly trying to figure things out in the half court, and they were just blitzing, I believe, the Mystics in transition. At that point, I was like, well, crap, if this was what they look like in game one and they don't have the answers yet, this is going to be a terrifying team by the time the postseason comes around. And then Candace Parker misses what feels like 45 games, and they just couldn't find a rhythm. But in a vacuum, I feel like they're the team that no one wants to face. I mean, they have a bunch of talent. They have Candace Parker still, Allie Quickly, Courtney Vandersloot. You have Diamond DeShields coming off the bench at this point. Kalia Copper has made a leap. It also just kind of feels like they have the matchup with the Connecticut Sun now. Like, that's the one team that they probably didn't want to face. One, the Sun are just really freaking good. They're the best team in the league this year by the standings. But also, with the specific issues that the Chicago Sky had, in some part due to injury, just lack of continuity, they haven't consistently figured out the half-court offense yet. Like, they don't have a consistent method of attack. They have a bunch of different ways they can hit you with, but they haven't kind of found that flow and being able to, read each other in that way outside of random spurts. And the Connecticut Sun are not just a good defense. They are a historically good defense, one that just had 4 of their players make all defensive teams this season. And so if you're telling the Chicago Sky, hey, this is the half-court defense you're going to have to face, and they haven't figured things out yet, I don't know how I feel about their chances.
No, it's an interesting thing. And I was going to ask you next, when you look at these matchups going forward, we know what the Mercury can do. We know what the Sky can do. Are they running into the two matchups that hurt them the most as far as complete teams? We're talking about the Sun and we're talking about the Aces. Are these teams where their talent may not be able to overcome those teams, if that makes sense?
I definitely think so for the Sky. The Mercury, I'm a little bit more optimistic in their group. I do think the Aces are a better team. I think the Aces are going to win that series, but I think the Mercury have more of a chance just because they do have the size to kind of deal with the Aces. They have Brittany Griner. You still have Brianna Turner, and you match that up with Liz Cambage and Asia Wilson. Like, at least from a size perspective, they don't have to send a bunch of extra attention if they don't want to. I do think both teams probably wish they had those matchups flipped. Honestly, like, I think the guard play of Phoenix could maybe find some spots against Connecticut, and for Chicago, like, it'd just be a contrast in styles. Like, Chicago wants to push the pace, the Aces want to grind you down the post. So maybe you can make the argument there, but as presently constructed, like, I think Aces-Mercury is going to go longer than Chicago Sun. I'll put it that way.
It's very early for Kelsey Plum slander on the pod. What's your pick?
You know what? Kelsey's redeemed herself this year. I don't have many bad things to say about Kelsey Plum this year. I'd say it's 5-game series. So I would say Connecticut in 4. And I'll take Aces in 5.
I have Aces Sky.
Okay.
I have Aces Sky. I think it'll be a fun finals.
I mean, I'm down. I don't know if I see it, but I am certainly down. Oh, goodness. Okay. Only disclaimer for the listeners: I do not plan on hanging here long because I don't want to get too upset.
Oh, baby. Before you get into it, Nekias, during our quote unquote hiatus, has been roaming the baseline. That's a plug right there. Has been roaming and has found all the topics that will A, get us canceled, and B, get y'all to hate us. So we take a leap from the diving board and we jump head first. Let's get it.
Okay, so as usual, we are recording on a Sunday night, very late Saturday night. Get an article from Rolling Stone about how unvaccinated players are kind of leading the discourse in a way. They're kind of pushing the NBA in a way. And so I see the headline, I'm just like, oh boy. Like, before I even click the link, I'm just like, okay, this is about to be some sort of both sides article that I just don't think we have the space for nearly 2 years into a pandemic. Like, I don't even want to give it a click if I can help it. So I was like, okay, let's see what it is. And like, one of the first things I see is Kyrie Irving is allegedly following this Instagram page. And there's something about like vaccines being planted and some satanic computer and a plot about all kind of, I'm just like, what are we actually doing here? We have quotes from Kyrie's aunt. We have Jonathan Isaac being proudly anti-vax, and Enes Kanter is the voice of reason in the article. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is sending shots all over the place, and I agree with him for what it's worth. I'm just tired. We're too deep into this to have, shout out to my guy Jason Maples, who makes the joke all the time about people going to YouTube University. Oh, we're too deep into the pandemic to be answering the like, why are we still here? Like, unless you have a legit medical exemption, like, why a year and a half, 2 years into the pandemic are you like, well, I don't know about this vaccine?
Very difficult question to answer. I did not read or know about the article that you're speaking of, so I'm going to come from a place of a little bit of ignorance. But let's have some fun. Let's try and tackle it. Let's try and talk about it. The league has been very clear. And I've said this all summer. If you looked at the rollout of the rules and what they're trying to do and what they're saying, referees, coaches, employees in the building for the team, it's clear, hey, if you get that direct deposit, go ahead and get that vaccine. We're not going backwards. And that's the plan for the league. We're not going backwards. We did the bubble. We did the condensed season. We're firing on all cylinders now. And if you look at the consequences of the rules for vaccinated players versus unvaccinated players, it screams, hey, man, you might want to get on board. Hey, refs, you might want to get on board. Hey, coaches, personnel, you might want to get on board, because what we're not going to do is go back to what we've been doing. We've been leaving money on the table. I'm not saying this from a right or wrong perspective, but to me, this is the league's perspective. Mm-hmm. We're going full steam ahead. We did all that to get to this year, and we're going. So you better jump on board. What gets interesting to me, and I thought about it with the Andrew Wiggins shot attempt, I guess. Well, missed shot attempt. That wasn't even an attempt at a pun. Too much attempts here. But I thought it's a little tricky in that area because it is mandatory in certain places. Like, hey, if you're going to perform or play in certain states, you have to be vaccinated. The league has not made it mandatory, but they have definitely laid out the groundwork to say, hey, there's a difference. And so what my mind goes to is, what's the punishment look like? You know, let's say an Andrew Wiggins just doesn't play home games, or Kyrie doesn't play home game. Like, what's that look like? How do you punish someone for something you didn't say was mandatory? I'm intrigued by that. I don't know. I mean, the question you asked is an answer. I don't have the answer to that. For me, I took my 2 shots in my left arm, and mainly because society, man. That's just I call me a sucker, but I care about people. So if I could play my role, play my part, I'm good.
As someone that also got their 2 shots in the left arm, ironically, like, it should be that, like, I struggle to say simple, because like I get hesitation, particularly from the Black community. I get hesitation. I get concern. I get the brow being raised. I don't think I have the time to get into U.S. history or Black history as to why the hesitation is warranted on a wide scale. But like, I do at a very basic level get hesitation. But like, also, the research is kind of there. Or shoot, on a very basic level, just looking at some of the rollouts that I've seen personally, like I'm living in Charlotte now, but like I'll come from a small town in South Carolina. Like, to see, hey, we're going to have pop-up clinics here to get your shot in these, you know, less fortunate or poor Black areas, and to see a lot of people from a different demographic going into those areas to get the shot. It's just like, if it's that dire, that should be like, hey, wait, if we're getting skipped in the line basically for these vaccine shots, maybe they aren't as dangerous as we think they are. At least that would kind of be my thought there.
Oh, I got you going.
So see, this is why I didn't want to hang here too long.
Nope. We're getting out of here. We're getting out of here because we are on episode, what, 40 something? I'm trying to get to 100.
All right. No, we'll leave it there. I'll just say I get hesitation, but also please get vaccinated. Please get vaccinated.
Get it done, folks. I'm not. I understand why the voices have to be as loud as they are, and I understand people think differently, and I respect and appreciate all opinions. But let's get this done, folks. Let's knock this out. Let's go to the free throw line. Go 2 for 2.
There we go. Please get off Facebook, get off YouTube. All right. Anyway,
you've taken out Hulu and YouTube, just so you know. You want to go on a 2K rant next? Because any shot I have of being featured in that game is ruined by you.
What did I do?
Calling out shot tendencies and lob tendencies. I'm getting killed.
A little bit.
That's not accurate. It's just jokes.
Okay. I want Trae Young to throw more lobs than he receives in 2K. Like, I think that's okay. I wrote that article on basketballnews.com. Check it out. But anyway.
2 plugs, by the way. I'm giving you 2 plugs.
2 plugs.
2.
See, even after some time off, you're throwing lobs.
Lobs, no puns. It's a new day. Yes, it is.
Hey, you had a Wiggins pun. It's fine. We'll let you rock. We will let you rock. But okay. We talked some WNBA. We've talked some off the court nonsense that may affect the current NBA season. Let's start previewing the actual NBA season. We're going to kick things off in this episode with the Atlantic Division. That is Boston, that's Brooklyn, that is New York, that's Philly, and that's Toronto.
Did you pick the Atlanta Division to get your Ben Simmons takes off?
No. To be completely honest, I started off with the Atlantic just because that's the first one in alphabetical order. And that's just kind of what I was going for there. But there is a lot of Ben Simmons nonsense going on. Well, I don't want to call it nonsense. Let's not say nonsense. There's a lot of Ben Simmons activity or lack thereof. And it has been since, he passed up the dunk and Doc Rivers said some things and then went on First Take to say that he didn't say those things, even though we have documented evidence that he said those things. And
see what I mean? See, I knew it was coming. No disrespect to anyone, but I feel like over the last 2-3 weeks, I go on Twitter and I just check in on the timeline and I see a Ben Simmons take or Ben Simmons discussion or discourse, and I immediately swipe out of the app. And so that's where I'm at with the whole Ben Simmons thing. But I'm excited to talk about the Atlantic Division. I'm excited to talk about hoops. Like, the season is upon us. And this is our first time actually potting before a season starts, right?
Yes, it is. We are entering new territory. When we started the podcast back in January, we were, a few weeks in. It was
now we get to be just loud wrong for at least 3 weeks before the season starts. It's amazing.
It's great. Preseason haven't even started yet. So everyone's optimistic. I mean, I guess Thunder fans probably kind of know what it is, but they're optimistic about specific players, I would imagine. We'll get to their division down the line. Anyway, we are kicking things off with the Atlantic. I plan on going alphabetical order here, but do you want to start Philly just to get the Ben Simmons stuff out of the way? We can.
No, you drive the ship. I'm just here to rebound.
Here to rebound. See, that would have been a great plug to go Philadelphia since they got Andre Drummond. But you know what? Let's start with Boston. 500 team last year, 36-36, 7th in the East, 10th in offensive rating, 13th in defensive rating, 13th in net rating. They have a new coach. They made some tweaks on the roster. Most notably, Al Horford is back. Dennis Schroeder, after betting on himself and it not going as well as he thought it was going to go, he's in Boston. Josh Richardson is there. Also got a 1-year extension. And out of Boston, at least on the notable side, Kemba Walker, who is in New York, Evan Fournier, who is also in New York. And if you want to call Tristan Thompson notable at this point, you can. He's in Sacramento after a fancy trade in the middle of the summer. So, Steve, my first question for you The first question I have for Boston is who is starting alongside Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown this year? That's one of the first.
It's an interesting deal. I think we've talked about this before. There's a couple different ways you can go with it. It depends on how you feel about Josh Richardson and how involved you want him to be in the squad. I think it will likely be Schroeder with Marcus Smart. And for me, I would go with Robert Williams and bring Al off the bench. Just because you saw what he did in that role last year. You paid the man. You might as well continue to grow that core and let Al fill a piece and maybe play them together, however you want to do it. Let him have the second unit or stabilize the second unit because you have the scoring in the first unit, and let Williams be a roller, let him be a defender, that type of deal. So that's my first thought. You could go Smart at the 1 and put Richardson in, but that could also be your closing lineup. Just kind of depends on where he's at. So my first gut thought is that it will be Schroeder to start with Marcus Smart and the Time Lord.
Okay. Like I figured that it was going to be one of Smart or Schroeder in the backcourt. And I kind of penciled in Al Horford as a starter. Just because I think they're going to want his spacing. They're going to want his passing. One of the things I wrote about, actually did a preview for the Atlantic for basketballnews.com. Another plug, that's 3. But one of the things I noted as a slight concern for me was the passing ability of the team. This is a team that was in the bottom 5 in like assist rate and potential assist and hockey assist. So I was wondering, like, do you start out, if for no other reason than to kind of juice that attack, use him as a high post hub, take some of the creation burden off of Jason Tatum? He did make a minor leap as a passer last year. You certainly wouldn't confuse him with like a LeBron or a Luka level initiator or anything like that. So do you start Horford to kind of help in that regard? Or, like you said, continue to give Robert Williams those reps, because last season he showed some pretty solid passing flashes as well, kind of running some delay action above the break. They tossed to him in the high post. He's picking out cutters. Not much in terms of short roll film, isn't making those corner kick outs, but I think he can do that. I think it's just going to come down to what Ime Udoka prioritizes in the front court. Do you want the spacing and that passing, or do you want more vertical pressure? And if you're not starting Smart and Schroeder together, then I do see the case for having Robert Williams as a starter, just because he's going to, whatever you lose in the backcourt, if you go Smart and Richardson, like Smart can get downhill, but he's not Schroeder. And Josh Richardson needs the defense to be entirely bent to get to the rim consistently. So if that's your starting backcourt, you're going to need Robert Williams, as violent as a roller as he is, and as athletic as he is, to kind of bend the defense vertically that way. So I'm still kind of torn on what they're going to do, or what they're going to do. Like media day does start this week, so maybe we get a better handle for that once the questions start rolling in. But that's probably my most pressing thing for Boston. Like, I don't know who starts.
I think you can definitely pencil in Smart, Brown, and Tatum for sure. It'll be interesting to see. And kind of what you mentioned about Horford, I like him bringing that presence to the second unit, because I think they'll need that possibly a little bit more of his creation, a little bit more of his pick and pop ability, be able to run some of those sets and get some action created off that maybe have more value with the second unit than with the first unit. But either way, I think they can feel comfortable with what they have. And we saw Williams show flashes as far as being able to dribble handoff, those type of deals, as you stated. But it'll be interesting. I feel like Boston has pieces, but the question is, how will they look? What will they run? Do they have enough shooting to make it work? That's kind of been my biggest concern with them. You talk about the playmaking, the passing. You can run all the actions you want, but if you don't have the threats lineup wise, it kind of brings you down a notch. So that's where I'm kind of thinking with Boston. How do they that consistent pressure? How do they generate that movement? How do they open things up where it's not just Tatum making plays or Brown making plays, how they use their talent together to create a situation where the defense really has to think.
Got you. Another question I have for you as it pertains to Boston. I think it's fair to say, like, obviously Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be the most important young guys for Boston. They just happen to also be Boston's best two players. So, duh. So, like, beyond them, and if we remove Robert Williams from the occasion, who's their most important young piece? Is it Peyton Pritchard? Do you need another leap from him? Is it Aaron Nesmith? Is it Romeo Langford? Is it Grant Williams? Like, who does Boston need a leap from the most out of those four?
That's a good question. I think Peyton Pritchard has shown an ability to be able to produce and help your team night in, night out. I think if you're asking what would help Boston the most, I think it would be Nesmith making a leap. I think just with his size, his shooting ability, that would help them be able to have another piece they can throw in different lineups, help him with the small ball lineup. He can become a consistent presence and affect the game on both ends of the floor. That helps them more. Obviously, you would love to see Peyton Pritchard take a leap. I think Grant Williams being able to take a leap would help, especially because he can play multiple positions and he can help you on both ends of the floor on paper. But if we're talking overall, I mean, because you know what you're going to get from Peyton Pritchard, you know what you can get from Grant Williams just right now. I think if Nesmith takes a leap, now you have another piece you can count on. And now it's not just Josh Richardson as the wing off the bench, if that makes sense. So that would be my thought initially.
Got you. Like, I had a similar thought process. Like, I think it came down to Nesmith and Langford for me. And I think once you add a Josh Richardson into the fray, I think I kind of have to lean Nesmith because he is the guy with the skill, not just shooting, but a guy that can shoot off movement. And that opens up more plays in the playbook for you. Just the type of screening actions they can run for him, being able to stretch the defense and also kind of bend the defense with those actions. I think Nesmith has a skill set that isn't really replicable elsewhere on the roster. And so if you do get him to the point to where he defends well enough, where he knocks down enough shots, kind of lives up to the college reputation, he's firmly a rotation player at that point. And again, just fitting him around, around Smart, around Tatum, around Brown, if they want to go small, or just whatever lineup they want to throw out there. Having that kind of movement shooting, I think, would help Boston quite a bit in spurts. So I think if they could get something from him, I think that's your answer among those four.
Is this going to be the destination for Josh Richardson? I don't want to hit you too. I don't want you to stay too long on this one. But is this going to be that outside Miami landing spot where he finally kind of finds a home, even if it's not he's buying it, he can at least pay rent?
I don't know. That's my real answer. Like, I don't know. It's hard to think of like two better wings you could put him alongside than Tatum and Brown. And if you get the rim pressure from Smart and or Schroeder, then that just makes his life so much easier. So like it can be like, I'm probably like 65-35. Yes, this is the spot. But man, it's just been such a wonky 2 years for him since he's left Miami. Like it's hard to be super confident right now.
I think this could be a good spot for him. And I think him being able to operate with that second unit as it looks right now could place him in a more comfortable position, more Miami-esque, if that makes sense, usage-wise. I think part of the issue for Josh Richardson was in Miami, he kind of broke out, but he had a lot of the responsibility as far as creation, having the ball in his hands. And that's not a role that's going to get replicated everywhere, as we've seen. And not that he can't play off the ball, but it's different when your opportunities go from this much to this much, and you have to create the same windows. So I think
Right.
potentially being able to have that second unit play a big role in that second unit could get him more comfortable, and now you can mix him in with the starters, that kind of deal. So in theory, this should be a good landing spot for him. It's just going to be, I wouldn't give up on him as a player, but this is team number 3 now. So he's going to have to show and prove.
That he is. Let's talk stars really quickly. What is the next evolution for Jason Tatum in your eyes?
It's a really good question. I think more consistent aggression, quicker decisions. I think he showcased that last year, but I think making quicker decisions, driving with more force, just making those quick moves where, hey, I'm going to drive, you cut me off, I'm going to a fadeaway now. Or, hey, I'm going to put my head down, make a play, or I'm going right to my pull-up. Just more force, if that makes sense. I think he's been trending in that direction, but I think if he can consistently do that with the package he has, with the playmaking he has, with the scoring ability he has, he'll continue to take in the leap. But it's hard to say because he's been playing so well. So it's just, can he add that force? Can he add those drives? Can he mix those in to where now he's a threat face up, post up, on the drive? You don't know exactly where he's going to go. And he's got all sorts of counters. I think if Tatum gets to that level, you got a real problem.
I'm with you on that. Like, I think, like, he has the perimeter stuff down. Like, he can sprinkle in jumpers however you want him to in the mid post. He can get to the 3-ball however he wants. Like, the side step is pretty much patented for him right now. He has that. It's figuring out the downhill element. It's really figuring out the intermediate, that pretty much that 10-foot and in range for him. Like, something that I've harped on for him over the last season and a half. For a guy with his kind of scoring ability and his touch in particular, for him not to have a consistent floater is just weird to me. It's odd that he just does not consistently have it in his repertoire right now. Like, adding that, I think, takes a little bit of pressure off of him. But then it's also getting all the way down to the rim. Just pulled up his numbers on Basketball Reference, like mid-20s in terms of free throw rate the last 2 years. Like, you would like to see that at 30 as a baseline with this kind of usage and this kind of scoring load that he has. And just the body that he has at this point. Like, he's gotten a lot stronger since he's entered the league. And we saw those flashes when he was dropping 40 and 50 towards the end of the season. Like, he gets ahead of steam and drives with some confidence. He can get to his spots. He can get to the line. And that complements the pull-up jumper. That complements the side step. And once he starts drawing two to the ball, we did see a little bit of improvement as a passer. To your point, decisions need to be made quicker. That just kind of comes with reps and that comes with time. But I think it all starts, I think for me, is just zoning in on that 10-foot and in range. Like, being able to get to your floater when you don't want to get all the way to the rim, when you are getting a little bit tired, or if you are facing, you're facing Utah on a random Tuesday night, you're not getting into Rudy Gobert's body 12 times a game. So having that kind of counter is going to help, and that should carry over to the postseason when teams kind of want to give up those intermediate shots. If you can get to those consistently, that puts the defense in a bind. And also just getting those free throws, getting the free throw rate up, I think that opens up everything else. Because if he becomes a more threatening downhill threat, that opens up more passing windows for him. In more passing windows, that's more reps for him to hit them. He hits those more consistently. You don't need a major, you don't need a 2014 Spurs-esque offense if Jason Tatum is just a walking two to the ball guy because of how dangerous he is as a scorer. So it's just kind of refining the margins for me when it comes to Jason Tatum.
What's their best lineup?
Their best lineup. I have two in my head.
There's got to be 4 pieces that are consistent. I think it's got to be Schroeder, Smart, Brown, Tatum. Am I off?
I don't think you're off. No. Like, I just worry about the shooting between those two. Like, Smart is, like, Smart has kind of solidified himself as a solid shooter at this point. But even then, like, defenses pay attention to him probably more than his percentages would dictate. But like, they don't like there's a difference between the way teams close out on Marcus Smart and the way they close out on like Duncan Robinson or something. Like Dennis Schroeder, he had the year in OKC where he shot the three ball very well. And like he just hasn't had it before or since. And so in addition to the shooting ability, there's also the slow load up on his shot. There's also the fact that he can't really get to it quickly off the bounce either. So I just kind of worry about those two as the backcourt around Tatum and Brown from a shooting perspective.
So their best lineup: Smart, Richardson, Brown, Tatum, Horford. I'm thinking two ways here.
Yeah, I got you. That's probably my answer. I'm also intrigued with like a bigger lineup. Like, give me Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, and Williams. I want to see what that looks like. But
wow, they're going double big for the 2021. It's a new day.
I want to see 100 minutes out of that lineup at least. Like even if they don't close with it, I want to see some late first, mid third minutes with that group.
All right, it's 90 minutes on the Celtics there.
This is what we do at the Dunker Spot. You know, we dig deep into lineup minutia. Let's go.
Lord, how long is our net segment going to be?
3 minutes. Let's go to Brooklyn. They won 48 games last year, second seed in the East, best offensive rating in NBA history. They added Paul Millsap, they added Patty Mills. LaMarcus Aldridge is back. Spencer Dinwiddie's gone. Jeff Green is also gone. DeAndre Jordan was exiled. Landry Shamet is in Phoenix now in a trade that I still don't understand. But anyway, the Brooklyn Nets. I feel like you know what my primary question is going to be for the Nets.
This man's going to talk about, how did Nick Claxton, how he play?
Yeah, like what are the Nick Claxton minutes for this Brooklyn team? Could it help?
I think Nick Claxton is protected. I think it's been showcased or shown that they want him to continue to grow and continue to develop and contribute for this team. They do have a lot of veteran bigs, but Claxton's presence will allow them to keep those guys fresh. So I don't know that it necessarily affects Claxton's role or ability. That's a guy they've had great confidence in. They showcased that last year. I think that'll continue. But you have different cards you can throw on the table, if that makes sense. We can go LaMarcus, we can go Millsap, we can go Blake if we need to, but we always have Claxton. And so I think it's more of a depth thing than a get Nick Claxton out of here type deal.
Do you want to take a gander? Do you want to take a guess at how many games Nick Claxton played 20 or more minutes in last year?
We're not doing this, are we?
I feel like it's I feel like it's interesting trivia.
12.
15.
Let's see. Yeah, there you go.
That's not enough. Like he's their best young big for one. He might just be their best big at this point. Or at the very least, you can project it that way.
LaMarcus Aldridge, Paul Millsap, Blake Griffin slander. Let me check their ages.
The first check their ages of the 2021-22 season, I guess. Does that count?
This tracks.
You know what? I'll let you have that one. No, it's not slander. Like it's confusing to me that Millsap lasted on the market as long as he did. And like, of course, he ended up in Brooklyn, because why wouldn't he end up in Brooklyn? But it's just like, man, you have Millsap, you have Blake Griffin, you have LaMarcus Aldridge. Like KD played some 4 and 5 last year. You added James Johnson. You drafted Day'Ron Sharpe, who if Nick Claxton is going to be battling for minutes, there's no way Day'Ron Sharpe's going to find any kind of spot minutes. Like he's very much going to be in the G League, I feel like. And I like him. Like big body, can rebound. a sneaky good passer. Like I would like for them to find minutes for him, but I don't think that's going to happen. Day'Ron Sharp's going to be my Claxton this year, I feel like.
How can Day'Ron Sharp be your Claxton if Claxton is your Claxton?
That's a good question. Give me some time to think about it. However, it's just a very crowded room. Like I'm all for optionality, but at the same time, like when you do have a guy that you should invest in him.
See, but I think they have. Like I think they've made sure that he always has a consistent presence. Is it as much as some may like? Probably not. But he's been a part of the mix. Like it hasn't ever been Nick Claxton DNP. He's out of the rotation. He's always been in there. To me, I think these moves were more for the postseason. Let's make sure we have lineup versatility. Let's make sure we have depth options. So it's not just, hey, big guy who can dribble. We got Blake Griffin. And that's it. You know what I mean? Small ball lineup. Who's our 5? Blake. Okay. We need a little bit more than that. So hey, we have Paul Millsap too. We have James Johnson. We have other options. And we can kind of throw different things out there. Now it's going to be interesting to see what lineups they land on and how they do it, because remember, Bruce Brown had a great impact as a quote unquote big.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to take time for them to figure out and develop those lineups. But I think it's just having more pieces than they had before and having more options rather than just, hey, this is what we got. This is what we got to roll out there.
I get it.
It's still on the payroll.
Oh man, I respect it. But like it's just you have Claxton, man. Like play Claxton. Now you have an assembly line of like 6'8" to 6'10" guys.
I love that I love that I made that joke. Sorry, y'all.
That was
also, I love that we let off our Brooklyn Nets coverage with Nick Claxton. Like that's as dunker spot as you can get. And I'm sure we're gonna go right to DeAndre Bembry or something. So
don't tempt me, because I will drop some bars on DeAndre Bembry if necessary. But no, hey man, is he toolsy wing? But anyway, what's the Nets' best lineup for you?
The Nets' best lineup?
Yes.
Oh boy, that's a good question. James, Kyrie, Joe, KD, Bruce Brown. That's my favorite one. Because with Bruce as a big, quote unquote, and his ability to roll and finish, what do you do? Now, obviously, you could switch, but they have guys where it's not really ideal to switch.
Mm-hmm.
I still love those 4 pieces plus whatever. Whatever you can do to make it tough on teams. Patty Mills interests me because you can make an argument. It could be Patty, James, Kyrie, Joe Harris, KD. But that would be fun. But I'm thinking about the functionality of it. But like, what do you run outside of we're good? Which, I mean, is fine.
You got that, yeah.
I mean, they can do that. They will do that. But it's like, who sets the screen? Oh, I mean, James can screen, Kyrie can screen. Maybe that's the one. One of those two. I want to see that lineup. But I don't know if they'll put KD at the 5. Probably one of those two.
Yeah, I feel like part of the other reason you add, like, what, 102 or 103 years worth of front court depth is so KD wouldn't have to play the 5. So, or at the very least, limit it as much as possible. To your Bruce Brown point, is the 5th there. You know who else is a guy that can roll to the basket and make plays in that way? Nick Claxton. You know, if you replace Bruce Brown with Nick Claxton in that foursome, you get more size and you still get the roll threat.
Guys, we could put you in that foursome and they'd be all right.
I mean, yes, but I'm not Nick Claxton. So I mean, I feel like there are levels here. But no, in all in all seriousness, I do think the big three plus Joe Harris is going to be in that grouping. With that much offensive firepower, it probably doesn't matter. Like, unironically, I think Claxton is my answer there. If I'm ranking the fifths, it would probably be Claxton for me. I'll probably go Claxton, Millsap, then Bruce, then Blake. Actually, not going to stay too long because we already talked about the bigs a bunch. Like, what kind of role do you see for LaMarcus Aldridge this year?
Similar to what we saw last year, probably with less minutes,
less responsibility. I was about to say, like, I mean, he did look fine during the first stint, and then he had the health scare. And now he's not only is he back after the health scare, he's back after the health scare after Brooklyn has added a bunch of front court depth. So I'm wondering if he is going to kind of take on the, I don't know, like, where is he in the rotation now? Like 10, 11, probably?
That's what's going to be interesting to see what they start with and where they go with. Is he upgraded DeAndre, where he plays maybe 10, 12 minutes or gets a couple runs, and that's it? Is he a matchup-based guy? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm happy he's back, honestly. That's the most important thing. Like, I'm happy he's healthy and clear and he feels comfortable playing. So, but I don't know what it looks like. Does he start? Does he come off the bench? Is he a role? You know what I mean? Like, and that's the Millsap thing was like that's great they have him. Wait, how's this work? Like, are you playing Blake and Millsap off the bench together? Like, I feel like there's a lot of moving pieces here, and they're gonna have to figure out the lineups once again.
The real wild card here, and this was actually brought up to me, so like this isn't my original thought, but it made me think. Do you see, with them adding this much front court depth, like, do we see KD back at the three? Like, do you start the big three and two bigs into the regular season?
Joe Harris slander?
It's not Joe Harris slander. It's like protect the big three type beat. And like Joe Harris probably still closes game and plays. Like, if they start, say, Millsap and Aldridge together in the 4 to 5, like Joe Harris will play more minutes than both of those guys. And he would close out games. But just from like a side / hey, we're going to save KD throughout the regular season type beat. Do you go that route?
Playoffs maybe, matchups maybe, but I don't think that would be the plan, if that makes sense. I think they love Joe Harris too much. And
fair enough.
He has too much to the program, in my opinion. You got your 4, and then let's add one, whoever's got it going, or whatever makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I'm very interested to see how the rotation will go. I'm interested to see year 2 of Brooklyn. I was impressed by year 1. I thought the way they played offensively, how they worked towards, hey, we have a lot of different things. We have a lot of different options. We can move the ball, hurt you a lot of different ways. You got to deal with it. I thought defensively they had the activity. How do they build on that? You know, I know not a lot of people are high on Brooklyn's defense, but they were able to find a way to get enough out of what they were trying to do. Can they build on that? Can they sustain it more? Can they grow from what they built last year? That'll be interesting. And then the lineups, like, I'm stuck on the lineups. Like, that's the one big question I have with Brooklyn is what's the rotation look like? What are you trying to do? How do you get to the different places? How do you get to the different pieces? How does it grow as the year goes on? Because you have a lot of different options. They're going to have to figure some things out. So those are my 2 things as far as things go. But I think Brooklyn's in a good spot in year 2. With the success they had last year and then falling short, I think it's go time. What's the thing? Scary? What's it?
It's Scary Hours.
Is it still Scary Hours? Is that cool still? I'm old, so I don't know, man.
Hey, yeah, we're rapidly approaching October, so we'll allow it.
Spooky season. I don't know.
Spooky season. Okay, one last thing on Brooklyn, and then we can move to New York, which is gonna be fun. On the defense front, one question I had in my notes: who is Brooklyn's best wing defender? And I guess my second question to that would be like, how many plus wing defenders do they have?
Bruce Brown, James
And,
Johnson.
and is that just it?
Define plus.
I take that as a yes. Okay. That's DeAndre Bembry slander, by the way. But in all seriousness, like it's the Nets had.
Did I say James Johnson?
You did say James Johnson.
Thank God. I'm not trying to get front kicked.
You know what? I'll allow it. The reference, not you getting kicked, of course. Just wanted to clarify that. But no, like the Nets were what 22nd in defensive rating last year, and they were a little bit better than that in half court defense per clearing the glass. So, like, when you have that much offensive firepower, like you don't need to be good. You just have to not be dumpster fire. There was a stretch during the regular season where they were very much dumpster fire, and then they got better. But I'm just concerned within a playoff context, at least. I'm just concerned by the lack of perimeter defenders.
So outside of Nick Claxton, real quick, what's the thing that we're going to argue about with the Nets in 10 episodes or so?
Outside of Nick Claxton, I mean, I think it's going to be Claxton minutes and just like the defense as a whole. I think it's going to be my thing. Like, I think their personnel, they're going to switch a ton. That's what they did last year. So I don't think they're going to leave that from last year. I don't know about the horses with that. Because again, like I just don't think they have a bunch of switchable guys. Like they have Claxton, like Bruce Brown could punch above his weight. James Harden is a really good post defender. He is also going to be a year older. Kevin Durant was pretty good defensively last year. He's also going to be another year older. I don't think Paul Millsap is a switch guy anymore at this stage of his career. He's also older. James Johnson is there, but if you're playing James Johnson, you're also dealing with the randomness that comes with James Johnson with the ball in his hands. And like even with James Johnson, he's a guy that's defending 4s and 5s for you. This isn't Miami version of James Johnson that was switching 1 through 5. So I just feel like there's some holes to poke at.
So we're in reruns, is what you're telling me.
It's just hard to. I see it, but I don't see it, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's better than we were at before. So the Nets are good. The Nets are good, right?
The Nets are very good. Very glad that we got through an entire Nets section without the very obvious elephant in the room in terms of games played. To the Knicks. 41-31 last year, a surprising 4 seed. Very good defense, not so good offense. Kemba Walker is there now. Evan Fournier is there. Reggie Bullock is gone. Elfrid Payton is gone, which probably counts as an addition for the Knicks at this point. Frank Ntilikina is also gone to Dallas. How are you feeling about your Knicks?
You said your Knicks as if you haven't been beeping with Knicks Nation for the last 6 to 8 weeks. The Knicks intrigue me. I like the addition of Kemba and Evan Fournier and them saying, hey, we found something. Let's run it back. Let's see how far this can go. I think that Fournier is a guy who you can run sets around. He will give you spacing. He'll give you shooting. I think Kemba gives you a greater pick and roll threat than you had in the starting lineup before. Scoring, being able to put pressure on defenses, which can open things up. I'm intrigued to see the usage and how they blend and mix those guys, because part of my, I guess, defense of Elfrid in the starting lineup last year was that opens things up for RJ to have the ball in his hands. That opens things up to run sets for Julius Randle and get those guys going, because those two need to be going. How do you kind of mix all of the talent you have now together to where you still have RJ going, you have Fournier involved, you have Kimba with the ball in his hands, you're still running sets for Julius. So you have more pieces, but that requires more work offensively to make sure things are kind of flowing together. So it'll be interesting that way. The concern I have with the Knicks is, I was always told growing up, you know, you can only surprise the league once.
Mm-hmm.
And so running it back, which seems to be a trend right now because no one wanted to do anything crazy this summer or too crazy. Can you replicate what you did last season?
Mm-hmm.
Can you replicate the same defensive effort? Because this is a team that has a template and a system on both ends that is built for the regular season. You know, we execute, we grind you, find a way to score defensively, make it tough on you. You got to battle us for 48 minutes. But having been in Memphis, that has a shelf life, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it doesn't work, but it takes work. Like you got to grind every night. And can you get the same buy-in, especially when you have teams' attention, where they're aware, hey, this team's going to get after us. Let's make sure we execute. So will they be able to handle the success they had last year? Will they be able to take that punch? Will they be able to counter? Because as we saw in the playoffs, Atlanta was ready. Atlanta took it to them, and they didn't necessarily have a counter. So I think they upgraded offensively in the starting lineup, but they'll have to maintain and have some more flexibility defensively to make this work and take another step this season.
The defense is my number one question mark for the Knicks this year, as good as it was. And I'm not expecting the Knicks to have a bad defense. Let's be clear from there. Where my concern, or at least where my brow is raised with the Knicks defense, is that, like you said, the template is there. They're very much, hey, we're crowding the paint. This is how we're going to do the pick and roll coverage. These are the shots that we are going to allow you to take. They gave up a ton of corner threes last year. Very quietly gave up a lot of shots at the rim as well, though that wasn't what they wanted to do. And the percentages on the corner threes in particular were very, very, very low. And so what the Knicks did, they upgraded their offense with Kimba and Evan Fournier, but those two are also, let's just say, they're worse defensively than the guys that they're replacing.
Ooh, Kimba Fournier slander. We arrived, folks.
I don't think it's slander. Like, here's my thing. As someone that crushed Elfrid Payton for multiple episodes in a row on this podcast, and rightfully so, to be clear, but as someone that crushed Elfrid Payton on this podcast, the one thing that he provided consistently for the Knicks was point of attack defense. Kimba, from an ability standpoint and also from a size perspective, cannot do what Elfrid Payton does on defense. Reggie Bullock was probably in over his head with the defensive role that he had in terms of on-ball responsibility last year, but he is a solid on-ball defender. Evan Fournier is not that. So that's going to be a drop there. Beyond that, there are also just the scheme limitations. Again, you're giving a bunch of corner threes. And so, like, I'll worry about the personnel getting slightly worse on the perimeter, which means more responsibility to RJ Barrett, who, to his credit, was a good defender last year. But I'm worried about that, and also just the shots that they give in the scheme. Like, if the luck, I want to say luck like it's a negative, but like if the 3-point percentage goes up because of the shots they allow are pretty juicy shots, on top of the personnel being a little bit worse on the perimeter, like I'm worried like what the defense, if the defense slips from 4 to 9, which is still good, the offense is really going to have to improve to offset that, in my opinion. And that's kind of the push and pull that I'm kind of looking at with the Knicks.
Do you think the offensive upgrades are worth what you may be giving up defensively?
The answer is yes if Kemba's healthy. Because I think they needed more shooting, period, but they definitely needed more pull-up shooting. And so if you get that from Kemba, then it's going to be worth it. Because if Kemba is 85 or 90% of himself, and you get it's 82 game season this year. So if you get 68 to 72 games from Kemba this year, and he looks pretty good, then the pull-up shooting takes pressure off of RJ Barrett. It takes pressure off of Julius Randle. It gives Julius Randle a guard that draws legitimate attention. And that makes life easier for everyone. If the offense is more efficient, the other team's taking the ball out of the basket, you're able to set up your half-court defense. And so maybe even if you do slip a little bit, it isn't as much because you're forcing the opposing team to, play half-court offense more often than they want to. So like that's the gamble that they're making, and I understand why they're making that bet. I'm really worried about Kemba's health, to be honest. Like it's a small guard, it's a small aging guard, and it's a small aging guard with knee issues. And this is a guy that's been banged up pretty consistently since the end of the Charlotte stint, just because of the ridiculous load he had to carry in Charlotte. So like I'm worried about the miles adding up. It's a good thing that he doesn't have to carry the load that he had to carry in Charlotte, obviously, with this Knicks team. He won't have to do that. But also the miles are kind of the miles. So I think a lot of this is contingent on just how healthy Kemba's going to be.
Kemba's going to have some moments in the garden, and Knicks Nation is going to enter your Twitter and destroy you.
Yeah, they're going to find one of the clips, and they're going to be like, I thought you said Kemba was the third worst point guard in the NBA or something ridiculous. I don't know.
They're on your head. Do you think there's enough value in having three guys who you can use hypothetically in pick and roll off handoffs as opposed to just RJ? Like three guys on the perimeter where you can run actions with as opposed to hopefully Julius does something or it's got to be RJ doing something.
It is. Like I said, those guys were overburdened. Randle in particular, he had the best season of his career. And again, like I don't know how anyone could have projected that Julius Randle would shoot like that in terms of spot-ups or just off the dribble. But it was also kind of a concern. This is something that we touched on the podcast throughout the regular season into the playoffs. It was also kind of concerning that Julius Randle had to be what he had to be last year to make that offense work. And the offense still wasn't good last year, 22nd in offensive rating last year. So it was a big concern that Julius Randle had to do everything he could. And with RJ being the number two, took steps as a shooter. He's still trying to figure out the best way to word it. Like RJ is very much left hand, left side dominant as a pick and roll guy. So you are able to kind of shade him a certain way and make him less effective, if that makes sense. So like as he's still looking to add to his game, RJ Barrett as your number two on the playoffs team is not where he is right now. And we saw that during the postseason where he did not look very good in that Hawks series. It's good that now you have Kemba that can bend your defense. You have Fournier that can floss some handoffs. So now instead of Julius beat this set defense, and if you draw attention, then RJ can knock down a shot or pump and drive to one side. Now it's, all right, Kemba's running this high pick and roll, dump off the Randle, defense is scrambled. Randle makes a pass, defense is more scrambled. Ball finds Barrett. Now it's Barrett to the basket pretty much untouched. And like giving him more of those opportunities, I think is going to be huge for him and huge for this offense.
You bring up a good point, and just based on what you're saying, my mind kind of goes to a place where the Knicks aren't necessarily the pace team, so to speak, but they will work in the half court, and they will move the ball in the half court if they have openings. And now you have multiple guys on the perimeter who can finish plays, which I think there's going to be value in. And I think to your point, having Kemba and Fournier could allow RJ and Julius Randle to take the growth they had last year and have it be more natural, if that makes sense. Like, allow that to be more of a natural thing instead of having to force it because the usage is so high. I'm interested to see the step that RJ takes this year. I thought last year he really grew in pick and roll against drop coverage, as far as just being able to attack and read the defense and hesitate and finish and see when the big came up and drop it off. Does he take another leap? Does he take another step in pick and roll? Because any other coverage, it was tough sledding. Whenever the defense came up, especially for some reason, my mind goes to Miami. Whenever they put some heat on him, it was curtains. Wasn't a good thing. And obviously, we talk about the playoffs. And now, how does Julius adjust to teams knowing what he is now? You know, we saw it last year. He answered the bell a lot, but in the playoffs, that double team was locked in. And now, how does he handle teams literally game planning for him? You know what I mean? That's part of the responsibility of being that top guy, being that top star. You become the guy that's at the top of the board. You become the guy that we sit in the coaches meeting and say, hey, what are we going to do with him? How are we going to take his game away? And so can he take another leap against that? I'm interested to see how the bench grows too. Like I like the idea of Rose, Quickly, and Burks off the bench, just offensively.
Yes, a lot of firepower.
Give him a different look, different pace. I think we saw that last year. The bench played differently than the starting unit. I'm interested to see if Obi Toppin can produce. I still think he's just in a tough spot of, I think his best position would be the 5 because of his rolling ability. But at the 4, he becomes a switch guy, and it doesn't produce the results. The shot's not there like it should be to really make defenses pay. But I like the Knicks. They made the tweaks they needed to make. Now, can they adjust to a lead that's ready for them?
That's going to be key. To your Rose Quickly Burks point, just pulled up PvP stats just to see how they did last year. Nearly a plus 13 net rating and nearly 300 minutes together last year.
The Nekias favor the Knicks.
All right. just wanted to back you up. But yeah.
Nick Analytics, double pun. 2 free throws. Thank you.
I don't like it. 2 quick lineup questions before we move. 1, who starts at center for the Knicks?
I think it's got to be Mitchell Robinson, if healthy. Nerlens was great, but I think it's got to be Mitchell Robinson if he's ready to go, and that should help them. If you have Mitchell Robinson good to go, now you bring Nerlens off the bench, becomes different. Now the question is who finishes. I think Nerlens may finish more games than Mitchell does, but it'll be interesting to see.
I think they're going to give Mitchell the opportunity to close out early on, and I think Mitchell's going to love having the opportunity. 1, of course, you want to close as an NBA player. Also, this is contract year for him. So if he can prove that he can be not only productive, but productive in important minutes, that helps his bottom line, figuratively and literally. Second lineup, I actually thought of a third now. My second question is going to be like, what's the Knicks' best lineup to you?
Ooh, the Knicks' best lineup. Best lineup for the Knicks. I think it's their starting lineup with a big, just based on how they play. But that's a cop-out. So if I were to go with an alternative lineup, I'm going to say, let's get wild.
It should be good.
Ooh, I don't know if I can do that. Never mind. I was gonna get too crazy. It's not a realistic lineup. I would love to see if you could play Randall at the 5 and RJ at the 4 with the personnel you have. Throw one of those guards into the mix. But I don't know if he's ready for that. So I will probably nope, gonna default. There are 4 players in a big. I would love to say Quickly, Kemba, Fournier, Barrett, Randall, but I don't know if Tibbs will ever get to that. It'll probably, his favorite lineup will be like Taj Gibson.
Oh man, Taj Gibson will have a spot in the NBA as long as Tibbs is coaching.
Oh, Taj Gibson is gonna play.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm so glad we're on the same wavelength because my third question was going to be: do you think the Knicks have the ability to go small? Because this is something that I touched on in my article. Like, I think my lineup to watch was Randle at the 5, Barrett at the 4. I think I went Kimba Rose, and I think I went Kimba Rose, Fournier, Barrett and Randle. Because I do think.
Wait, you repped a Kimba Rose backcourt? This is growth, folks.
It was a lineup that I was intrigued by. I don't know how good it would be, but like I'm curious if they have that line of flexibility to go small. Because off the top of that was the lineup to watch. And the literal first sentence of that section was, "I would be surprised if we even got 75 minutes out of this group next year." So like, I don't even think Tibbs would go to it either. So I'm with you. But that's kind of my question. Like, is
that what they're missing? Because if you think about it, postseason wise, this gives me, all due respect, I'm sorry, Salt Lake City, this gives me Utah vibes. Can you even go small? And if you do, what's your option?
Yeah, because like that, and I think that's kind of where losing Reggie Bullock hurts a little bit, which sounds hilarious out loud. But like, I think they do lack the 3/4s necessary to go small. Because like, Barrett is really the only guy in the room that can kind of punch above their weight in that wing/forward room, just because of how strong he is. Fournier is not a strong dude, and we also saw it's Brooklyn, so you have to add that context. But we also saw what Evan Fournier looked like in space against high-level shot creators. It's not pretty. So, like, if Barrett's the only guy you have that can really afford to defend 3s and 4s, and you feel confident about it, that's before getting into like the rim protection stuff with Randle. I don't know if they can go small. And if they can't go small, like, that gives those playoff caliber teams a built-in counter against them.
They need Obi to step up. I would say Kevin Knox, but
we don't have to. No. Props to him for shooting well last year. I'll give him that. But outside of that,
it's clear that Tibbs is not going to knock on that door.
And that, my friends, is where we transition to the Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh, God, do we have to?
Yes, we do. They were the East top seed last year. It did not look like it in the second round of the playoffs last year, but they were the top seed in the East last year. 13th ranked offense, 2nd ranked defense. They were 5th in net rating. Andre Drummond as a Dwight Howard replacement is hilarious for a multitude of reasons. But Sixers talk has to start in a very obvious place. How many floaters is Tyrese Maxey hitting this year?
A lot. I'm excited for his year too. I think he's going to have the opportunity to grow. And the more he grows with his ability to create and score, the better off the Sixers will be, especially in that second unit. It's interesting. You brought up Drummond. I'm still so weirded out that he's already in the prove it stage of his career. Like, that's no disrespect to Andre Drummond's talent level, but it feels quicker than expected. Like, at least Dwight got a couple more hacks at being Dwight. Like, it felt like the league was like, yo, no, you come here and play off the bench.
I'll tell you what, there's no shortage of hacks with Dwight Howard, first and foremost. Second, yes, we are in regular season form. But anyway, yeah, it's weird that Andre Drummond is here. Like, I get it as someone that has been critical of Andre Drummond on this podcast and in other spaces. Like I get the limitations with him, but it's also like it's I don't know, like he's not 30 yet. Like he's what, 27, 28? Like
let me actually check his age real quick.
oh man, the serious check his age. But like it would be something if it was like Dwight Howard, to where you have the name recognition there. You do have a couple of very clear NBA skills. And it's also like, yeah, I guess if you have that and you're like 32 or 33, and it's like, okay, cool, we'll give you the minimum. Let's see what you can do. Andre Drummond is like fresh off a big contract. And like I get him taking the minimum to join the Lakers after he gets bought out or whatever. But like after that,
I get a job, man. He's 28 years old. And I think it's a sneaky value signing for Philadelphia with Embiid and his health. Hopefully he can stay healthy. But the issue has always been, what do we do when he's not? What do we do when he's out? How do we monitor his minutes? Can we still run the same things? Those kind of things. And when you have Drummond, you can kind of have that lineup consistency and have a role threat. We're not going to do the lob threat argument today.
Are you sure?
We're in a good place. This is a safe space. Everyone is joyful, so we're not doing that today. But that is someone who can help you in that area. I think.
Go ahead.
I think it's going to be interesting because that will help that second unit that doesn't necessarily on paper have built-in creation. If we're just looking at the depth chart, you have Tyrese Maxey, who can create for himself. How many plays is he going to make going forward? You want to see that development. You have Shake Milton, who we know can get hot, but how do you open those things up for him? So having Drummond at least at a base and having a guy who defenses will respect the role of, we'll put it that way, sir, makes it interesting.
Okay.
What are we gonna do? George Niang slander? What?
No, he can shoot. He's solid. There's your value sign. No, but I get it. Like I think I still don't understand why I got yelled at about this tape, but like I think current Andre Drummond is better than current Dwight Howard right now. So like there should be at least a little bit of a bump there.
You get yelled at a lot on the internet.
I do get yelled at a lot on the internet. It's so weird. Like I'm not even super confrontational or anything. Like I don't get it. Like I made the Archie Barrett Tyrese Halliburton tweet.
Oh, I forgot to do that in the next segment. I missed an opportunity there. I'm disappointed in myself. Sorry, folks.
It is A-okay. I'm sure that's going to be brought up ad nauseum throughout the Tyrese Halliburton is going to have like a 2-for-8 game from 3. I'm going to get quote tweeted on that tweet. Like, this is the guy you said is better than. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. The obvious elephant in the room, aside from Tyrese Maxey floaters, is Ben Simmons.
Nope, not talking about him. Joel Embiid. You think he's going to take another step?
Oh, that's going to depend on how spread the floor is for him. And that's going to depend on if Ben Simmons is on the rock. Oh, but no, in all seriousness, that was one of the questions I had for you. Like, similar to the Jason Tatum question, like, what's the next evolution for Joel Embiid? Is it just the post passing or is it something else for him?
For me, based on last year, it's just consistent passing. Just being able to make the play when the help comes. And he showed improvement, but it's got to be a consistent thing where teams really got to think about doubling. They're going to no matter what because of his talent level, but that has to be something where hey, we're going to make the defense pay, because that makes a difference, mentally, when you have a scorer and you know what they can do, and now in the back of your head, hey, this person can also hurt us if we send more help. It's different. Like, I still remember, I think I've said this before, but one of the longest coaches meetings I ever had in the league was LeBron in Cleveland, when he had all those shooters, and it was like, what do we do when he posts up? Do we let him score or do we double? And neither option sounded good by the end of the day. And that's where Embiid's got to get to, because he's added the face-up game, the mid-range, the pick and pop, pick and roll. He can give you whatever you want. Now, if he can add that to it and make you think, hey, no, you probably shouldn't double, now you're in a real tough spot. But Philadelphia is a very tough team to talk about at this stage because of the elephant in the room that you mentioned, Ben Simmons, that we do have to talk about. And because they're running it back, and running it back involves Ben Simmons, and Ben Simmons has no desire to be involved with this situation any longer, and has made that as clear as day. Hey, don't even fly out, fam. I don't want to talk to y'all. I don't want to see y'all.
Shout out to environmentalist Ben Simmons.
This man changed his relationship status on Facebook to single and meant it.
That he did. So like I know you're not a fan of like trade hypotheticals, so we're not going to go there. My question, like removing Ben Simmons out of the equation, I would assume if they're going to trade Ben Simmons, it's going to be for a guard of some sort, whether that's like a D'Angelo Russell's and or Malik Beasley package in Minnesota or wherever they go with Ben Simmons. I would assume it's going to be for a guard, one that can pull up or whatever. If we are to work under the assumption that Ben Simmons is traded for some sort of guard, what does that do to Philadelphia's defense? And this is a point that I've heard Zach Lowe and others make about like maybe the collective is kind of underrating what Ben Simmons means to that defense and just how much more Joel Embiid would have to cover for if Simmons isn't there. So like, are you worried about Philadelphia's defense as a whole if Ben Simmons isn't there?
Very. I mean, we can say whatever we want about Ben Simmons, and I'm sure it's been said. We're trying to avoid it like hot garbage, but that sounds offensive. I'm sorry. But
Ben Simmons slander?
That's a guy who can defend multiple positions. And if X is hot, let's put Ben on him real quick and try and shut that down. He helps your point of attack. He navigates pick and rolls. He can defend those type of actions. You don't have another guy on that roster that can necessarily do that outside of Danny Green, but Danny Green is a different Danny Green than he was a few years ago.
That's a very nice way to say it.
It's all about kindness in season 2 of the Dunkerspot. At least in the preseason.
Okay.
You can't, that's going to be a big issue. And think back to the playoff series. We talked about it back and forth. They had to put Ben Simmons on Trae Young just to be able to navigate pick and rolls. Literally, that was his piece of, hey, he can get over the pick and roll and push Embiid back and they can figure it out. And we went back and forth on it. They don't have another guy who can do that. Matisse. I forgot about Matisse. Matisse can do it, but that's it. So yeah, it's a big thing. I don't like trade hypotheticals, but at this point, and I'll ask this question to you: whenever this Simmons trade goes down, are you looking for Philly to get a star or pieces?
I think they're going to end up with pieces. I think if they were going to get a star, like it would be done already. And Lord knows Daryl Morey's been pushing for the star. But like, I just don't think that's out there. And if Ben is serious about not coming to camp and not playing games, period, then they're absolutely not going to get the star. Because there's not even going to be the, hey, Ben Simmons is playing 17 regular season games. He's averaging 16, 9, and 7 with a steal and a half in the block. Like, maybe we should up the ante for him. Like, if that's off the table too, then I think it's going to be pieces. And so to the defense point, like Ben can defend all over the place. Just that positional versatility that you spoke about is very true. Is why he's one of the best defenders in the NBA. I think if you want to peg it down at a very basic level, like he is their big wing defender right now. Because Tobias, as hard as he fights, like he's not that guy. Matisse, as good as he is, he's not big wing defender. He's very much navigate screens, and he's still trying to learn to find the points of screen navigation. Like he's just so nutty as a recovery guy that you kind of overlook the angles that he takes sometimes. But like Matisse is not a big wing defender. Danny Green, in terms of I think lateral quickness at this stage, he's probably best equipped for that role, but like he doesn't have the size for that. So like, not only can Ben cover a bunch of holes for you, he is the one guy plugging that specific hole. So like, I think if you're trading him, you've got to get that back somehow. Like, I think that's why Minnesota does intrigue me, at least. Like, I'm not a huge fan of D'Lo as a headliner for a guy like Ben Simmons. But
we snuck in some DMs though.
Oh, okay. We don't come on. But like, it would have to be him, and like they'd have to push hard for like Jaden McDaniels, for example, just so they could have some semblance of that kind of length, that kind of activity, that kind of versatility.
You just want to watch McDaniels and Matisse play defense together.
I mean, I would like that, but I'm just saying, like, you need that mold defender to replace Bit. Like, if you're going to go the pieces route, one of the pieces has to be a guy that can defend forwards and a guy that can fly around. Like, it can't, if they do take like the Minnesota trade specifically, it can't be like D'Lo, and it can't be D'Lo and Beasley for like Ben and something. Because like the shooting is important, the pull-up shooting is important, but like then who defends those wings?
It's an interesting point, and I think they have transition issues. I'm very interested to see how that would work. Like, it's a weird deal where we know the limitations of the Sixers with Simmons and Embiid, but we also think that this team is built towards those two. So it's not like you can just remove one piece and all of a sudden you're going to raise the roof. You're losing like a lot of other things as well. So that'll be interesting to me. More important to take a leap this year, Tyrese Maxey or Matisse Thybulle?
I think it's Maxey by default. Like, one, I'm not sure where the leap comes from with Matisse this year, I would say. Like, he needs to be better as a shooter. I don't think the kind of shooting leap that Matisse would need to take this year to draw the kind of defensive attention that he would need to draw is going to come in 1 year. Like, Matisse would have to become not just a high percentage guy, but a high percentage guy taking like 7 or 8 threes a night for him to A, help the offense, and B, bend the defense at the same time. So like, it wouldn't surprise me if Matisse is like a 36% 3-point shooter or 37% 3-point shooter, but that's going to come on like 3.5 attempts, and defenses aren't going to care about him yet. For Maxey, like, he already gets to the rim. He already has the floater. He has some point of attack chops. It was kind of iffy in the playoffs, but understandably so. He's a rookie guard. So if he grows in those areas, if he does make a little bit of a leap as a playmaker, they're going to need that point guard spot solidified regardless. Even if they somehow get a kumbaya with Ben Simmons, he comes back, like, Ben's going to be your 4. Like, I think that much is established at this point. They're going to need a lead ball handler. So I think it's more important for Tyrese to show that he can handle more of those reps.
Tobias Harris, can he do this again?
Yeah, I think good. He's really freaking good on offense. I think he can. I guess my bigger question with Tobias is like, is there any sort of refinement that can come with him at this stage? Because like, as good as he is, like, he's not drawing double teams. I don't know like what kind of passing leap he can make. I don't think they're going to run a bunch of ball screens with him this year.
Now, I think Tobias has kind of entered that category of this is who he is. Let's hope that he does that to the best of his ability, if that makes sense. Kind of, and this is not no disrespect, but kind of like Rudy Gay esque, if that makes sense. At the peak of his powers, where he is who he is, but we can take what he is and make it really tough for you.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of where Tobias is at this stage. I don't know if there's another leap. I mean, you can obviously do a better job in certain areas, but at the end of the day, he's a volume scorer. So Philadelphia is such a weird team to try and preview right now because it feels like none of this makes sense and none of it matters because Ben Simmons only recognizes 49 states in the USA now.
That's kind of tough, and he is willing to play and or fly into any of them, but not that 50th. That's just kind of tough. Yeah, it feels like we're gonna look back on this pod in a month and be like, oh, we just talked about an entirely different team. Like it just doesn't even. But for now, Simmons is a member. Do we want to touch on like the half court stuff with Ben Simmons, or do you want to move? Like I don't. We might be doing that for a different team by the time we get through these previews.
We'll revisit if somehow they make this work. Keep the content up. It's tease for the folks.
There we go.
And I also know you have an entire nation to offend up next. So
I do not have a nation to offend, but we can cap off the preview section with Toronto, a 27 win team last year, pretty much average in offense and defense. A lot of injuries, a lot of COVID, a lot of weirdness. They were in Tampa on top of all the stuff, and this was coming off a pretty deep playoff run for them last year. So first things first, Kyle Lowry's gone. My number one question is, how do they make it work in the half court? And like that is the singular question that's going to decide if they're going to be high level play in, flirt with the 6 seed type team, or if they're going to be towards the bottom of the East. Can they get enough juice in the half court?
That's going to be interesting to see what they run, how they try and execute. I think it's going to take a lot of movement in the half court. I think they're going to have to get very creative and put pressure on defenses that way. This isn't a team where you can just rely on the pick and roll or the ISO or the post ups. You're going to have to really generate those movements, hope you get your guys going, and then kind of branch out to those type of things. I think that they have the bigs to roll and create. I think it's going to take Pascal being more comfortable in the role. I think he should be, and I think it's going to take another step up from OG and Gary Trent Jr. hopefully continuing to progress his career. But you know what Freddie can do. So I think it's just going to have to be that mix: the handoffs, the pick and roll, spacing, empty corners. That's just kind of creating some of those looks in the half court and then playing out of it and attacking and transition scoring that way. Because if they are just a walk it up type team, it's not going to work. If they're a slow to get into their sets type of team, it's not going to work. If they're a 1 or 2 option type of team, it's not going to work. They're going to have to find their identity and kind of grind teams in the half court and defend their butts off on the other end.
The defend their butts off portion, I think, is going to be locked in barring injury. Like, I'm not going to go into my whole spiel again, but like I think Fred VanVleet defended at an all defensive team level last year. OG Anunoby also defended at an all defensive team level last year, just didn't play enough. Pascal Siakam, when he's back, recovering from the shoulder surgery, but when he's back, like he's shown that he could be not just a versatile defender, but a high level one at that. So if you have those 3 on the court, like I think you're pretty much guaranteed a good defense if they're there consistently. The half court offense is where it's going to be at. Like they're going to have to play with some pace, I think, to your point. And I think that's where they're really going to miss Kyle Lowry, because the offense wasn't that good last year, but Kyle Lowry did give them that pull-up element. And more than anything, just randomness. A random cut here, a random pull-up here. He pushed the pace after misses. Like he was their transition attack. And so to replace Kyle Lowry in terms of ability and just in terms of the cadence that he plays with, to go from that to Fred VanVleet, who is good on offense, but he is a pound the rock into the ground type guy. And they can't afford to be that kind of offense because they just don't have the scoring talent to play at that kind of pace. So the leap from Fred is going to have to be making quicker decisions. And beyond that, like he has to figure something out at the rim. Because he gets downhill and just does not know what to do when he gets there. And that's problematic if he's going to be the lead ball handler. Goran Dragic is going to help set the table some, but like at this stage of his career, like he shouldn't be head of the snake. Like there's a reason Miami had him coming off the bench for the last couple of years. So it's going to be, you're going to need internal improvement from Fred. I wrote about OG Anunoby, some of his upside as a guy that can handle more on-ball responsibility, some of the strengths and weaknesses there. Toronto's going to have to give him some rope, because if this isn't going to be a good team this year, you at least need to figure out like what he can do and how that's going to shape what you do moving forward. And this is going to be a pretty big year for Pascal Siakam. Like once he's healthy, how much of that number one load can he handle? We've seen it look good. We've seen it, in the postseason in particular. We've seen it look not so good when he's the focal point. What kind of growth can he make there? Does he have more counters outside of the spin move? Does the passing continue to grow? Because he is a good passer at the forward spot, but can he draw enough defensive attention to make that matter? Will there be enough spacing around him to where it matters? Which is going to, tying into the lineup stuff that we've been doing basically for every team at this point. Like, what's Toronto's best lineup? Is it going small? Is it just trying to put as many spaces on the floor as possible and trusting that the defensive personnel can get enough stops for you? Like, what is their path?
To your Pascal point, I'm going to just go alternative take with it. I think if the other guys can become more consistent threats, he'll be better off. I don't want to say he is who he is at this point, but the scouting report is written. And I don't know how much adjustments are going to be made, and I don't know if the roster has helped him to a degree. He's going to have to play better, be more consistent, but we've seen it in spurts. But I think if those other guys can contribute and he can kind of get some of the things out of the flow, because that's the thing about Pascal. When he kind of made the rise, no one thought about Pascal Siakam. He was just making plays because they were there to be made. Now he's forced to make plays. So can it be more organic for him? Can they get him more in the flow? Those kind of things. I think that we'll ask this question. Who's more important for them offensively this year, Gary Trent Jr. or OG Anunoby?
That's
hiatus, but I'm back on a heater, folks.
That's a good question, because like the better player is obviously OG, and he's the prospect that matters. But for their offense, like what Gary Trent brings as a pull-up shooter and as a movement shooter, he may be more important to the offense just because they need that. Well, actually, no, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to say OG. One, you need to get the reps from him. You need to see what he can do as a creator. He's already a good shooter. He's a solid finisher. He needs to get better. But you need to see what he can actually create and see what the self-creation flashes are there. I would change my mind from Gary Trent Jr. because if he doesn't have it, they have Svi, Mikhailiuk. So like at least the skill set is somewhat replaceable there. We're not slandering Lee on this podcast, sir. But I guess the contract. Yeah. Man can shoot the rock. What's the problem?
I just want to say his first name.
Okay.
Are you worried about their big man room? Because I love the signing. I love them getting Precious in that trade.
Mm-hmm.
I love what he could do with Nick Nurse, but I also love what Kim does in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have Chris Boucher. But they also found Freddie Gillespie. and he kind of works at times. So are you concerned? Oh yeah, but Pascal and Scotty Barnes. Are you concerned about the rotation?
Not really worried about the rotate. I don't think Freddie's gonna be playing much, if at all, for this Raptors team. And if he is, that might be a problem. I'm not
Freddie
super
Gillespie slander. Let me check his age real quick.
He's got to be able to do something on offense, but not super concerned. Like, I think Kim is good. Precious is intriguing, like the grab and go ability. Like, if he's actually going to be taking threes this year, I'm kind of intrigued. And Chris Boucher is also good.
24 years old. This does not track.
Yeah, see, it's just, you just watch him and it's just like, huh. Like, I feel like a lot of the Freddie optimism last year was like, wow, he's not as bad as Aaron Baines has been this year. And so now, once you remove the Aaron Baines filter, it's just like, what does Freddie do?
You managed to take out both Aaron Baines and Freddie Gillespie in 2 seconds, which also means Aaron Bain fan is going to find you. So you got to deal with that, buddy.
Probably. But, that's just a risk that I'm willing to take. That. Yeah, it's just kind of like, okay, what does Freddie do? Like, he gets offensive rebounds, but he misses the putback. He's not a vertical spacer. Like, he's a fine positional defender. He's not like a, So anyway, that in other words, the Raptors have better bigs in the room than Freddie, and they also have Pascal that can play some five. And I'm pretty sure Scotty's going to play some five at some point. So I don't anticipate him having much of a role on this Raptor team.
Are you worried that they don't have the playmakers to make this work? When you look at Freddie off the dribble, Malachi Flynn off the dribble, Gary Trent Jr. off the dribble pull up, OG off the dribble drive, Pascal post up off the dribble spin. Who's the guy that's passing the ball? How do they get to drive and kick? Where do they go there? Like, that's where I get stuck. Like, and that's why I was kind of talking about, like, hey, they need to generate some offense, because if left to their own devices,
I'll be the offense.
1-2 dribble up.
Yeah. This is something I wrote in the preview. This conversation that I've had offline that I've kind of gone back and forth with. It's like, okay, who's the Raptors' best passer? Like, is it Dragic? Is it Pascal? And if it's either of those guys, like, you rank, you place those guys against other teams in the league, like, I would imagine that's going to be one of the worst best passers in the league from that perspective. So, yeah, I think Goran Dragic is going to be, as long as he's there anyway, because he's not long for Toronto. He's made that he made that pretty clear. He's not trying to stay there. But for as long as he's there, like, I think Goran's going to be the table setter in that regard. And again, like, I do think Pascal is a good passer at the forward position. Is he run the offense through him passer? Probably a step below that. But, like, you have to work with what you have to work with. My real question about the offense, aside from personnel concerns, is like, how is Nick Nurse scheming this up? Because even when he had more talent, like, the offense it didn't hum.
I think my favorite part about this is my next question that I was going to ask you is, when do you re-enter the Nick Nurse zone? And you did it before I could even ask. It's phenomenal.
Is that slander? I'm glad we're here, but, like, also, I don't think that's slander. Like, I think it's a valid question.
I think Nick Nurse has some stuff offensively in the half court, but it's based on a lot of handoffs, a lot of movement, and he's gonna have to get that back in. Like, I think it was one of those scenarios where he had what he did, he ran it, then he got the talent, so it kind of moved, and then the talent kind of left, and then they kept doing that. They're gonna have to get back to generating looks, running the offense, grinding teams that way.
That was a very nice synopsis of put another way, the offense has not evolved, is what I'm hearing. I
remember when I said you're going to offend the entire nation?
I don't even know if that counts as offending. Anyway, best lineup for the Raptors. I'm leaving that for you.
Choking on my water. Best lineup for the Raptors. I'm gonna go Freddie, Gary Trent, OG, Scotty Barnes, Pascal.
Okay. I would probably.
Let me guess. You got Precious in there.
Maybe I might just have Precious in there over OG. Like, just switch everything. Give me Fred. Give me that's what this is the lineup that I had in the article. Give me Fred, OG, Barnes, Siakam, and Precious. Switch 1 through 5. Whoever gets the rebound, push the break, because all 5 guys can dribble. And if teams stop the transition attack, then you just kind of pray at that point. But I'm here for the defense. Like, that's the lineup I want to see from them. Jumbo plus Fred.
That's another double big lineup, by the way. Look at the evolution of Nekias.
I mean, is it double big when like Precious and Pascal are both like 6'9", 6'8", 6'9"?
For the bit, yes, it is.
You know what? Okay, fair enough. All right, that's Toronto. We'll go rapid fire to round this thing out. Rank the division for us, Steve.
Teams?
Yes.
I'm gonna go Brooklyn 1.
Mm-hmm.
Based on current events, I am going to go Knicks 2. I'm going to go Sixers 3.
Okay.
Boston 4, Toronto 5.
Okay. I'm going Brooklyn 1, Philly 2. Though, of course, if Ben's traded, then you have the asterisk there. But I have Brooklyn 1, Philly 2. I have Boston 3, New York 4, and Toronto 5.
You bought even the Knicks 4th. Oh, buddy.
I think Boston's better. I think Brooklyn's better. I think Philly's better. We'll see what happens with the trade stuff. But that's how I have it right now. All right. Top 10 players in the division was one that I broached to you offline, and you immediately scoffed at it.
I don't know what it was. This man wants to do lists now. This is not our thing. I'm not a list guy, but let's do it. Are you ready for my top 10?
No, but let's hear your top 10.
Reverse order.
Okay.
Number 10, Pascal Siakam.
Okay.
Number 9, Derrick Rose. I'm kidding. Tobias Harris.
I was like, wait a minute.
Number 8, Ben Simmons.
All right.
Number 7, Jaylen Brown. Number 6, Julius Randle. Number 5, Kyrie Irving.
Okay.
Number 4, Jason Tatum.
Okay.
Number 3,
this is the fun one.
Joel Embiid.
All right.
Number 2, James Harden.
Okay.
Number 1, Kevin Durant.
Okay. It's funny. I don't think we have much difference in our list. So I have KD 1. I asked this in a group chat a couple of days ago. My question was like, who's the second best player in the division? Because I was kind of torn between Harden and Embiid. And I made the point that, like, I think the only thing I'm sure about in terms of ranking players in the Atlanta division is that KD is 1 and Tatum is 4. And I just didn't know what to do after that. But anyway, I went KD 1, I went Harden 2, I went Embiid 3. Tatum is 4. Kyrie is 5. I have Randall 6. I have Jaylen Brown 7. I have Pascal 8. I have Ben Simmons 9. And I have Tobias at 10. And in the event that Simmons is traded, then Tobias slides to 9. And I have Marcus Smart at 10.
Oh, you had an alternative list.
Yeah, Ben Simmons is a major wild card. So I just wanted to make sure I had my ducks in a row in case he got like traded during the podcast or something.
All right. Ben Simmons gets traded. My alternative number 10 will be Blake Griffin.
This is a bad bid. This is a very bad bid. The only thing that would have made that worse is if you went Aldridge. And he's probably 12 for you. So like I don't even. Anyway, to round this out, we do have a few mailbag questions. We're going to go very quick on these. The first one comes from friend of the program, Tom Ziller. He says,
wait, hold on. Before we get to the great Tom Ziller, it's been a whole month hiatus, and I still don't have the password. We've only just been doing this forever.
So what I'm hearing is that you had a whole month to scroll up in your message just to get the password, and you didn't do that.
I got a crack in my screen.
Yeah, okay, there we go. All right, Tom Ziller says, the Knicks beat expectations last season and kept the team mostly together, yet it feels after they got trounced in the playoffs that many are dropping them out of the top 6 in the East. Tibbs teams almost always overachieve. Do you think it's more likely they fall into the play-in or somehow get home court in the first round?
Based on those two scenarios, more likely they get home court in the first round. I don't think Tibbs would let this group fall to that play-in status. I think in theory, they'll play too hard. In regular season, they're more built for that. They've improved some of the issues they had offensively, so they should be better in that area. And Tibbs should be able to scheme it up. So I would probably move them more towards half home court. I think they'll probably be in that 4 or 5 range to me, 4, 5, 6. Then be in the play-in. I think they play too hard in theory to be in the play-in. Now, I'm concerned that they can't sustain that effort, as we mentioned earlier, but it's the style is built for the regular season to stack those wins up. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. I think I have them, and I'll do an actual conference preview for the site, as we get close to the regular season. So this isn't set in stone.
How many previews you dropping, fam?
I'm doing one for every division, and then I'll do a full-blown season, predicting standings, awards, that kind of thing. So I think that'd be 7 in total for the 6 divisions plus the big one.
I'm gonna start charging you for these plugs.
Fair enough. But right now I have New York pegged at 6. So technically they're closer to playing to me than home court. But I'm with you. If they do fall into play-in, they're gonna be 7 for me. I don't think there's a way. I don't think the Knicks are gonna miss the playoffs. So play-in is technically my answer right now since I have missed 6. This question comes from Brian. It's a WNBA question. He said, what do the Liberty need to do in the offseason to build on their playoff appearance and be better next year?
Use their 2 best players together as opposed to just using one at a time. You can run action around your people. You can run different actions. It doesn't have to be one or the other. They're both really good. You use them together, see what happens, put pressure on the defense instead of, one has it going. Let's just keep giving them the ball. You can build on that. That's my opinion. I had the Liberty as a sleeper pick.
You did. The WNBA preview with Monica McNutt.
She laughed me out the room. And I was ready to laugh if they had won that game.
But then they didn't.
They did. But yeah, if you can use your 2 together, you'll be all right.
To bounce off that, and I want to preface this with, this is not intended to be slander. I think this
is a Sabrina take, isn't it?
It is a Sabrina take.
All right, man.
She just has to be better. I think that's really. Steve is taking off the heads. I'm not going full blown take. It's fine. I think more movement around her would help. I think freeing her earlier instead of having her walking up and running pick and roll, because like she needs a screen. And that's not inherently a bad thing, but like knowing that she needs a screen is probably not best for her to just kind of walk up into like a set defense and call a ball screen. Like get her flowing off something that leads into something, like run some Chicago action for her, call a pin down, get a handoff, then get downhill. Because then that opens up the playmaking, that opens up the pull-up shooting. If she has to do it against a set defense, like there are limitations there. We'll leave it there. Anyway, all right. This question comes from June. It says, if someone told you Jason Tatum would be a true MVP candidate level player this season, what level of player would Jaylen Brown have to be for the Celtics to be a serious threat to come out of the East? And what would Jaylen need to add to his game to get to said level?
All-star.
Okay.
And he would have to add consistent shooting in pick and roll and playmaking in pick and roll to where teams either he makes them pay if they're in a drop or they have to bring their big up and he can create plays that way. Not that he's not able to create plays, but I think teams can live with what he does to a certain extent. He's got to extend that to where now he's a threat as much as Tatum is to teams. So that would probably be my gut reaction, June.
Okay. I would agree. Like I think he need to be like all-star starter good, not just coach's pick for Boston to be able to come out of the East. Because you basically saying like you need 55 to 60 points between Jason and Jaylen in like a Brooklyn series or a Milwaukee series to get that done. Or probably both, depending on where they land in the standings. And for Jay, like I think it is going to be the playmaking. I think he can get to the rim. The shooting has gotten better. Like he's very good as a spot up guy. The pull up shooting has gotten better. Like I think if you can make more reads coming out of that makes him more of a threat. So the playmaking is probably where I lean more towards the playmaking. Last question is going to come from Joe. He says, it's been a recurring narrative around the Celtics for the past couple of years that the Celtics need a big to slow down Joel Embiid. But does such a big exist? Who is the best? All right, there we go. Who's the best Embiid defender in the league, and what defensive schemes like Toronto's can undersized teams like the Celtics implement to slow him down or tire him out?
Got to use doubles. You got to time them well. Can't see it coming. If you can double them up, you can throw different looks at them, keep them out of rhythm. You got yourself a good shot. I think it's the big key as far as keeping him off of rhythm, because he's gotten better at, if he sees you coming, he's going to fire it away. Mm-hmm. But once he gets into his back down, now you come, or once he gets into his face up and looks like he wants to go to his back down, now you come. Those type of things to keep him out of his rhythm so he's not necessarily leading the dance, so to speak. That's where you can get him in trouble. So that would be my thought.
I am with you on that. Since Marc Gasol is now in Spain, who is the best Embiid defender in the league now?
Marc Gasol.
I'm not sure that's how that works, but you know what? I will let you. It's after 12 on the East Coast. I'll let you have it. Any closing thoughts on the Atlanta division?
I think it will be a fun ride. Again, it's all pending on what Philadelphia does. And the big questions I have is, can Boston make the adjustments early and make a leap? And can New York handle the success they had last year and maintain what they built last year? Those are the two things, because those are, to me, the two wild cards. Philadelphia, it's just a big bag of right now for me. Like, I just don't know. I'm sorry. And Toronto, unfortunately, I don't see them in the mix right now in this division, just based on what Brooklyn has, what New York could do, what Philadelphia could do if they make it right, if what Boston has in the tank. So it'll be fun, but I think Brooklyn's going to take a leap, and we're going to yell at each other on the pod. It's going to be great.
It is, in fact, going to be great. I'd like for Toronto to be good. That offense really, really, really concerns me. The Ben Simmons thing is obviously a big question mark. I have no idea what's going to happen there. And this is going to be the second, I guess, season in a row that there's going to be a lot of Knicks content on this podcast, regardless of how it goes. If the Knicks build on their season, they're like a 4 or 3 seed, then I'm never going to hear the end of it. And if they do slide to like 6 or 7, then I'll be throwing in sly references, I guess. So we shall see how that goes.
Are you really about to face New York all year long?
Because, no, I'm not. Like, I don't have the energy for it.
Because technically, you're on the verge of upsetting both fan bases. Like, the Brooklyn Brigade has let you slide on your ageist takes.
I don't think so. Like, I basically got ratioed when I was like, Milwaukee's my favorite. Like when I was in Texas for something. Oh, that's what I was in Texas for. But anyway, about a month or so ago.
It's different. It's going to be different if Brooklyn's good and then the Knicks are good and now they both are at your head. It's going to be interesting.
And just hit them with a bunch of good for hims and good for thems, and we'll rock it out. Oh my God. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dunker Spot. If you have not already, please subscribe, leave a review as well. We are on all podcast streaming platforms. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us. You can find me on Twitter at Nekias NBA. You can find Steve Jones Jr. on Twitter at Steve Jones 20. And with that, we will catch y'all later.
Bye.